They fined me $900 for soil disruption 3 days after the HOA's own contractor ruptured the aquifer behind my fence. The smell of sulfur hit every porch by morning. 17 kids missed school that week, coughing yellow dust out of their lungs. Welcome to my channel. I'm Rick Morrison, civil engineer out of Lakewood, Colorado, homeowner, widower, and the guy who watched a community lose its trees, then decided not to lose his mind. If you're new here, I document real HOA accountability cases, start to finish, from someone who's seen both sides of a permit. Subscribe if you care about fairness more than fear, and tell me, where are you watching from tonight? The first day I bought the house, my wife called it quiet enough to hear your own coffee pour. That was 12 years ago. Now it's just me, one golden retriever, and the faint smell of iron when the sprinkler hits the soil. She passed 3 summers back, right before our HOA approved the water recovery project. I kept her hydrangeas alive because they were hers. When the crew drilled through our drainage line, the ground heaved. It wasn't water that came out, it was steam, yellow and foul. The HOA president, Leonard Bixby, walked up like a campaign photo. All within specs, Rick. Don't dramatize it. His smile looked stapled on. Behind him, the HOA's contracted drill truck, marked HOA Water MGMT, HOA Property, hissed sulfur vapor into the air. They waved off my camera when I tried to film. That night I filed a complaint with the County Environmental Division. The response requires HOA authorization for parcel sampling. That was the first clue. Something in the subdivision plat gave them collective control even over private soil testing. I pulled the CCRs from the file box my wife had labeled in her handwriting. Article 7.3b was my starting wound. Common soil management and water table adjustments may be conducted by the association with indemnity provided by participating owners. Participating owners, plural. I never consented. By day 5, the grass along our lane turned gray, like burned sage. HOA board meeting that Thursday. I went. They closed the doors early for executive session. I could hear the muffled words through the drywall. Liability window. Test delay. Don't document yet. When they opened up, Leonard pointed at me. You can't film private HOA deliberations, Mr. Morrison. I'm filming the part I pay for, I said. The room quieted the way people do when someone points out the obvious. Afterward, my neighbor Clara, a retired librarian with a filing habit stronger than caffeine, whispered, "You should check the parcel chain. The HOA doesn't actually own that retention lot." She handed me a post-it with a property ID number, 19237B. I didn't understand yet, but that post-it would become the hinge of everything. For the next few nights, I pulled maps and public deeds from the county recorder's online index. The retention lot, where they drilled, was technically Lot B common easement, held in trust by the developer until conveyance to the association. No conveyance recorded, no title transfer, meaning the HOA was drilling on land it didn't legally own. Knowledge nugget number 1. A homeowners association can't act as a property owner until the deed to common areas is formally recorded. Without that, they're just a management body, not a landholder. I printed it all, hole-punched it, labeled it retention anomaly, and slid it into my binder. 2 mornings later, a friendly reminder appeared on my mailbox. Remove unauthorized recording devices, HOA policy 8.2. I hadn't even posted the video. I realized they were scared, and when people are scared, they start to make mistakes. That was when I met my first ally, Javier Torres, a municite, pal attorney I'd once hired for a drainage permit back in 2016. He still wore shirts with faint ink smudges on the cuffs from signing too many plats. "They drilled without property rights?" he asked. "That's not a civil matter, Rick. That's a regulatory one. The county inspector could shut them down if we verify the chain." "Then we verify," I said. He nodded, half grinning. "I like that you say we." We set a plan. I'd document every odor reading, every discoloration, every HOA statement. He'd cross-check parcel control. I went home that night, made coffee, and watched the yellow haze drift under the streetlight. I still kept my wife's porch light on. Habit, hope, something between the two. At 2 a.m., my dog started barking. Someone was rattling the side gate. I flicked on the floodlight, just a teenager from down the block, but on the gate latch, a folded HOA violation slip. Unauthorized exterior lighting, $50 per day. They'd found a way to fine me for keeping her light on. That's when I decided to fight them lawfully, completely, and in a way they couldn't erase with another notice. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the binder open, listening to the hum of the fridge and the soft tick of the baseboard heat. The violation slip lay beside my coffee mug like a dare. I thought of my wife again, how she used to joke that HOAs were petty governments for people who couldn't get elected anywhere else. She wasn't wrong. By 8 a.m., I was at the county clerk's office with Clara's Post-it in my pocket. The clerk, a young guy with earbuds tucked under his hoodie, pulled up the digital plat records. "Retention Lot B," he said. "No conveyance found." He printed the page, stamped it with the blue seal of Jefferson County, and slid it across the counter. I could still feel the ink tacky under my fingers. That document was the first brick. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for Tuesday night, 7 p.m. in the community center off Maple Ridge Road. I brought the stamped deed copy, 3 photos of the sulfur plume, and Javier's note, "Confirm on environmental jurisdiction before public disclosure." When they called for comments, I stood. "The lot you drilled on isn't recorded under HOA ownership. It's still held by the developer trust. You don't have the right to touch it, let alone alter the soil." Leonard chuckled, lips tight. "We've operated that parcel since 2008. Nobody cares whose name is on a piece of paper." "Regulators care," I said. He banged the gavel. "Out of order." The crowd murmured, neighbors shifting, whispering. Someone recorded on their phone before the board reminded everyone of privacy rules. I saw Clara give me a thumbs up from the back row. Later that week, a letter arrived, certified mail. Notice of non-compliance. Failure to maintain property appearance. They'd cited me for visible dirt disturbance near the side fence where the drilling runoff had settled. $150. I paid it, then photographed the check, the envelope, and the receipt, time-stamped on my phone. Javier told me to keep a log. "Documentation is the oxygen of justice," he said over the phone, voice rough from too much courthouse coffee. I started a spreadsheet. Date, violation, reference code, fee, response. By mid-March, there were 9 entries totaling $1,675. They weren't fining me to fix anything. They were fining me to make me quit. In the same month, an environmental inspector named Denise Carr visited after a neighbor's anonymous complaint. I later found out Clara made it. Denise was in her 50s, denim jacket over county ID. She took soil samples and kept her clipboard close. "That smells hydrogen sulfide," she said. "Not lethal at this concentration, but definitely reportable." HOA security tried to block her, claiming private property. Denise flashed her badge. "County trumps private. Step aside." That moment burned into my brain. Authority stepping up, calm and unshakable. She winked at me as she left. "You didn't hear it from me, but the state DEP is short-staffed. If you want them to act, file a citizen's hazardous release form. They have to log it." That night, I filled it out line by line. Coordinates, description, duration, sample odor threshold, attached photos. Mailed it certified. Then came the retaliation. Within a week, 3 HOA wellness checks from security. A complaint about my dog barking excessively, he doesn't. And a post on the HOA Facebook group claiming I tampered with evidence. Leonard even sent an email to all owners. Certain residents are spreading misinformation about board-approved infrastructure improvements. Trust your elected volunteers, not internet rumors. That was his smart counter-argument, reasonable on its face, toxic underneath. Early that Friday, Clara brought muffins and a new folder. "You need allies who aren't retirees," she said, smiling. Inside were printouts from Nextdoor and Facebook, neighbors frustrated about HOA fines, water bills, and secrecy. Start with them. We held a quiet meeting at my garage. 7 people came, a mechanic, a teacher, 2 young parents, Clara, me, and a man named Eric Chung, former environmental engineer with the city. Eric ran his finger down my deed copy and whistled. "You know this gives them 0 indemnity coverage if something goes wrong, right? They can't invoke the HOA's insurance without legal ownership." He explained the key point. The HOA's policy excluded acts on property not legally held in association title. That was the leverage seed. Knowledge nugget number 2 would come later, but here's what I learned that night. Policies matter more than people until you make them personal. The following morning, I called the insurer listed in the HOA disclosure packet. Midshore Property Casualty, Policy NCHAX 2109. Pretended to be a homeowner asking about coverage. The rep said, "We'd have to confirm the property schedule, but typically, only recorded parcels are insured." That was it. No coverage for the lot, meaning every drill, every deuce Ilar spent there was uninsured exposure. I felt adrenaline tighten my throat. For the first time since my wife died, I felt alive with purpose. Halfway through April, Javier suggested a quiet move. Buy the trust's holding company shares. If they never dissolved, you could own the retention parcel outright. Cheap since it's worthless on paper. We traced the developer's old LLC, Maple Ridge Partners, dissolved in 2013, but their successor interest, MRP Asset Rollover Inc., still existed with the Secretary of State, registered agent, a P.O. box in Arvada. It cost $48 to reinstate it online. I clicked Submit and became the legal successor to the trust that held the land the HOA drilled on. Reversal number 1 was now ticking, though no one else knew. That week, Leonard's crew showed up to patch the drill hole. They posted another notice. All inquiries directed to HOA counsel only. I smiled from my porch, binder in hand, and whispered to the air, "You're patching my property now. Tell me something. Have you ever dealt with an HOA that overstepped? Are you firmly anti-HOA, or do you think some of them still serve a purpose? Drop your answer below, and if you've got a tactic that helped you push back lawfully, share it so others can use it." I kept filming discreetly, labeling every clip by date. Each one showed a different layer of arrogance wearing a safety vest. By May, the sulfur plume had subsided, but the stains on the soil remained, bright yellow scars across brown grass. They called it mineral discoloration. I called it evidence. When the next board meeting came, I didn't speak. I just watched them vote to approve Remediation Phase 2 on land I now legally owned. The gavel hit. I started the countdown in my head. 21 days until their insurer would discover they were trespassing. And that's when I realized I didn't need to shout. I just needed to woo. Aight. The waiting was the hardest part. It wasn't just about patience. It was about control. Every morning I'd walk past that drill patch, now covered with cheap gravel and a "Keep Off Common Area" sign, and remind myself that it was technically mine. Javier told me not to tip my hand yet. "Let them keep spending money they don't have coverage for," he said. "The bigger their overreach, the cleaner your leverage later." I started noticing how silence works as a weapon. They'd send me violation letters, 3 in June alone, and I'd respond each time with polite, numbered paragraphs citing specific HOA code sections. Never emotion, never sarcasm. Bureaucracy hates precision. Clara once said, "You're playing chess with people who think they're hosting a bake sale." She wasn't wrong. By mid-June, HOA meeting minutes showed $42,600 spent on remediation and groundwater testing. Eric confirmed the invoices were coming from a subcontractor that hadn't filed any permits. I printed every record and color-coded them in my binder. Green tabs for money, yellow for land, red for health. Knowledge nugget number 1. Continuing thread. In most U.S. states, HOA boards must operate within the scope of recorded authority. If they act outside it, the directors can be personally liable for damages, not just the association. That was the kind of sentence that makes attorneys smile quietly. One evening as I was logging invoices, I found an internal email chain accidentally CC'd to all owners. Leonard's vice president wrote, "We may need to adjust statements. Rick keeps sniffing around the parcel file." Leonard replied, "He's bluffing. He doesn't know what he owns." I printed it twice, once for Javier, once for my file. At that point, I started building what Javier called the evidentiary narrative. Photos of the ground, copies of every notice, even voicemail transcripts from HOA security leaving. Friendly reminders. By early July, things escalated. HOA patrol vehicles parked in front of my house 3 times a day, sometimes idling for 10 minutes. One morning, I caught one of them photographing my fence. "Inspection," the driver said. "Routine." For what? I asked. Fence line conformity, he said, flipping a clipboard. There's no such section in the bylaws, I replied. He left without a word. It started to feel like a siege. Small humiliations stacked into something heavier. To shake it off, I spent evenings with Eric and Clara at the diner on Route 73, planning the next step. Eric would sip from his dented thermos of coffee, muttering about benzene levels and legal thresholds. Clara kept a notebook full of sticky flags. We need someone inside, she said, a board member willing to talk. It took us 2 weeks, but we found one. Melissa Hart, treasurer, mid-30s, single mom, tired eyes. She called me after dark one night. Rick, I don't like what they're doing. They voted to double insurance coverage retroactively. That's not legal. I met her in the library parking lot the next morning. She handed me a manila envelope labeled Insurance Addendum Draft. Inside, unsigned pages showing the HOA trying to amend the policy coverage after the fact. Fraud, plain and simple. Javier's eyes lit up when he saw it. If they file this and the insurer accepts it, it's misrepresentation. But if we reveal they drilled without title first, they're cornered either way. That's when I started counting days again. The renewal date on the policy, August 15th, 40 days away. Meanwhile, Leonard announced a community appreciation picnic for July 22nd, complete with BBQ and live band. We'll address misinformation, his flyer read. Perfect stage for exposure, but not yet. I wanted the audience ready first. So I made a quiet move. With Eric's help, I mailed certified letters to every homeowner summarizing verifiable facts, no opinions, no threats, just 3 points. The HOA drilled on land it doesn't own. The insurer has no coverage for that property. Continued spending could result in personal board liability. We mailed 51 envelopes. Within 3 days, my inbox exploded. Half the neighbors thanked me. The other half accused me of sabotaging community unity. That was fine. I wasn't aiming for popularity. I was aiming for daylight. At the next meeting, Leonard was furious. You can't distribute defamatory material? It's not defamatory if it's true, I said. He slammed a folder shut. You're poisoning this neighborhood. I looked around at the faces, families, retirees, new couples, all watching, all silent. You did that when you drilled through our water table. That line landed. You could hear paper shift, the soft cough of someone realizing they might be on the wrong side. Outside, Clara whispered, "You hit a nerve." "I need to hit their pocket next," I said. And that's when we discovered the missing invoice. Eric found it in the county records dump, a $9,870 charge to emergency soil venting, billed directly to Maple Ridge HOA Common Fund. It was dated 3 days before the board vote authorizing the expense. Fraud again. Timed fraud. I started drafting what Javier called the exposure package, a clean numbered document stack for the county inspector, the insurer, and, if needed, the press. Each page cross-referenced with a photo and date. But before we could deliver it, something strange happened. A process server showed up at my door with an envelope. Notice of arbitration request. Defamation and harassment. Filed by the HOA board against me personally. They were suing first. That night, I stared at the notice under the porch light, the same light my wife loved, and felt the fear come back. Not anger. Fear. What if they could bankrupt me before truth mattered? I called Javier. They want arbitration. He paused. Then we give them arbitration, on your terms. The plan formed quickless. We'd let the process start, then unveil the ownership records mid-session. Legally, publicly, cleanly. Tell me in the comments, where do you think the line is between HOA authority and harassment? Should they have the power to fine and sue the same homeowner? Or is that the moment the state should step in? As July 22nd approached, the smell returned. Light, metallic, like wet matches. I watched kids ride bikes through yellow dust and swore under my breath. That picnic would be more than burgers and speeches. It would be the start of their unraveling. The morning of the picnic broke hot and dry, the kind of July heat that makes everything smell faintly of dust and gasoline. I stood at my kitchen window, watching the HOA's rented canopy go up over the field they'd ruined. A speaker system, rows of folding chairs, banners that said, "Community Strong." The irony was almost poetic. Javier called around noon. "You ready?" "As ready as a man can be who's about to expose his neighbors," I said. He chuckled. "It's not exposure, it's sunlight." At 2 p.m., I arrived with a cooler of sodas like everyone else, blending in, nodding to people who once pretended not to see me. Leonard was already on the mic, wearing sunglasses and that same artificial grin. "We've weathered challenges," he said, "and today we celebrate progress." Behind him, the drill site shimmered under the sun, gravel bright and sulfur dust clinging to the edges like pollen. I found Clara near the lemonade stand and Eric beside the generator. Both nodded. Melissa, the treasurer, stood with her arms crossed, watching Leonard like a woman who'd finally stopped pretending. When Leonard called for questions, I waited until 3 others had spoken about landscaping and dues. Then I stepped forward, binder in hand. "I have one," I said into the mic. "Who authorized spending $42,000 on remediatis? On for a parcel the HOA doesn't own?" Gasps rolled through the crowd like a slow wave. Leonard tried to cut me off. "This isn't the forum." I flipped open the binder and held up the deed copy with the county seal. "This land was never conveyed to the association. It belongs to the original developer trust reinstated under state law. As of last month, I'm the trustee." Silence, then murmurs. He blinked, genuinely stunned. You can't own community property." "Check the title index," I said. "Book 7421, page 319, recorded July 1st. The HOA drilled and built on land it doesn't control. Every dollar you spent came from our assessments under false authority." Eric stepped forward with his laptop, projecting the parcel map onto the screen they'd set up for the picnic slideshow. The highlighted area glowed red. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "this is trespass, not governance." Leonard's face reddened. "You think you're clever, Rick? The board will litigate." "Good," I said, "because the arbitration notice you sent me confirms you're acting in your personal capacity, not as insured officers. That means no indemnity. Every filing fee, every attorney hour, it's coming out of your pockets." A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Someone in the crowd muttered, "Wait, is that true?" Knowledge nugget number 2. When HOA board members act beyond their recorded authority, they lose the shield of corporate capacity. Their personal assets can be at risk for damages caused by those actions. A county environmental officer named Denise, same one from before, was there for public outreach. She stepped up, pulling her ID from her jacket. "For the record," she said into the mic, "the county recognizes Mr. Morrison's ownership filing as valid. Any activity on that parcel now requires his authorization. Continuing operations without it could violate Section 1812-406 of State Code." That was the moment. My first true reversal solidified, validated publicly by neutral authority. Visual beat number 1 in real life, the office. There's badge glinting in sunlight, the HOA banner flapping behind her. Leonard tried to regain ground. "This is harassment. He's exploiting a loophole." I looked him dead in the eye. "It's not a loophole. It's the law you ignored." People clapped. Nervous at first, then louder. The band stopped tuning their instruments. Kids stared. The board whispered among themselves like a jury that already knew the verdict. After the picnic broke apart, Leonard approached me privately near the parking lot. "You've made enemies," he said softly. "Be careful walking your dog at night." It wasn't a threat that scared me. It was the desperation behind it. I just said, "Everything's on record, Leonard, even this conversation." He froze. "You're recording me?" I nodded toward my phone in my pocket. Colorado's a one-party consent state, informational only, of course. He stormed off, kicking dust across the gravel he once claimed as his domain. That night, my porch light glowed brighter than usual. I sat outside with the dog at my feet, sipping beer, hearing the faint hum of neighbor voices debating what had just happened. The community finally talking to each other, not just about me. Eric called later. "They'll scramble," he said. "Expect panic emails." He was right. By morning, an emergency board meeting email hit every inbox. Unauthorized property claim jeopardizes HOA improvements. Seek unity, not division. I just smiled and opened a fresh spreadsheet labeled Domino Phase. How far should an HOA really control your property? Should they dictate how you light your porch or the grass you plant, or when you can stand up for yourself? I want to hear from you. Drop it below. What's your line? By the next week, the insurer had already sent a request for clarification to the HOA. Melissa texted me a photo of the letter, underlining one sentence: provide recorded proof of ownership. IP for all parcels under remediation. Leonard was cornered. He called for another closed session. They couldn't close it this time. State law required open meetings when discussing expenditure disputes. I knew because I'd printed the statute myself. I attended that session quietly, front row. The gavel hit wood, and I watched him squirm behind the microphone. Mr. Morrison's claim, he said through gritted teeth, will be referred to legal counsel. Which you'll pay for personally, I muttered. He heard me. By the end of that night, 4 board members had resigned. The neighborhood was shifting, uneasy but awake. Something bigger was coming, a collapse that would need cleanup, not celebration. And that's when Javier said, now we build the reform offer before they destroy each other. Javier wasn't exaggerating when he said destroy each other. By the end of that week, the HOA's email chain leaked. Melissa forwarded me screenshots that showed the board split down the middle, 2 members demanding a settlement, 2 calling me a domestic saboteur, and Leonard threatening to petition for a lien on my property. He couldn't, legally, but fear makes people sloppy. At dawn, I found a yellow tag taped to my mailbox. Notice of accrued fines, $3,450. The code cited unauthorized land possession. They were literally fining me for owning the parcel they drilled on. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was textbook retaliation. Knowledge nugget number 3. Under selective enforcement doctrine, an HOA can't invent or unevenly apply rules against one homeowner that aren't enforced against others. Doing so opens them to civil liability and damages. That night, I documented everything. Photos, timestamps, even air quality readings Eric helped me log with a handheld meter. We had a stack of exhibits fit for a courtroom. Still, it wore me down. Each notice in the mailbox hit like a small hammer. I'd wake up in the middle of the night expecting another car to idle outside, another false inspection. The dog barked at every shadow. Sometimes I'd whisper to him, "We're okay, bud. We're still home." Fear was the HOA's real currency. They wanted me exhausted, willing to settle quietly. Instead, I started planning something bolder. It was Clara's idea, actually. "You should hold your own open meeting," she said over tea. "Same time as theirs. No secrets, just facts." So we did. We called it Community Transparency Night. Flyers went out, not fancy, just black ink on white paper taped to mailboxes. I expected 10 people. 40 showed up. We held it in my garage, folding chairs and a borrowed projector. Eric ran through the parcel map. Melissa explained. To the insurance labs, and I presented copies of the county report confirming hydrogen sulfide presence above safety thresholds. Denise, the environmental officer, attended quietly in the back. I told everyone, I'm not asking for revenge, I'm asking for responsibility. We fix this, or the county will. People asked smart questions. What would happen to dues? How to elect a new board? Whether the land could be reclaimed? We answered all of it with documents and calm voices. By the end, even the skeptics were nodding. The next morning, my garage door had been spray-painted in red. Traitor. For a moment, I just stared at it. My hand shook, not from fear, but fury. Then I picked up my phone and filmed a slow, steady clip. This is what accountability looks like when they run out of rules. Javier sent the video to the local paper. Within 24 hours, the Lakewood Tribune ran a small story. Homeowner claims HOA illegally drilled on private land. Faces harassment. The article didn't take sides, but it existed. And that changed everything. HOA calls tripled. Leonard sent a formal cease and desist letter through a law firm that mostly handled parking tickets. It demanded I refrain from disseminating misleading information. Javier drafted a 5-line response. All statements made are supported by public record. Any further intimidation attempts will be met with formal counterclaim under CRS 3833.3-2009.5. That line hit them like a brick. But the pressure built in quieter ways too. One night, a county vehicle rolled up outside with Denise again. She stepped out holding a clipboard. "Got something for you," she said. We're citing the HOA for unpermitted hazardous work. The fines per day, $500 since March. Per day? I repeated. Yep, she said, smiling. Do the math. 130 days times 500. $65,000. That was the real number. That would crack them. Tell me this. When fines hit both directions, do you think homeowners should pay for the board's mistakes, or should directors be personally liable? Comment below. I want to know how your state handles it. By late August, the HOA account balance was nearly empty. Melissa confirmed. They can't even pay the landscapers. Leonard started visiting houses, knocking door to door, trying to rally sympathy. He's a troublemaker, I overheard him telling my neighbor. He wants to bankrupt the community. I stepped outside mid-sentence. Actually, I said, the community's saving itself. You just don't like not being in charge. He glared at me, jaw tight, and walked away. 2 nights later, I caught a faint glow near the drill site. Someone had lit a small fire in the gravel pit. Old HOA files burning. I ran over with a hose and doused it, coughing through the smoke. The papers were mostly ash, but one sheet survived. A maintenance invoice signed by Leonard, dated before the board approval. I sealed it in a plastic sleeve. Evidence, again. That was the lowest point, strangely enough. Not the threats or fines, but realizing how small the people behind the curtain really were. I sat on the curb, smoke still in the air, and whispered to myself, this ends soon. And it did. The insurer called a special audit. The county scheduled a public hearing. Leonard's name was on every form. Javier looked at me across his cluttered office, eyes sharp. This is the run-up, Rick. The hearing's your set piece. We'll bring Denise, the deed, the insurance letter, everything. Public? I asked. Completely, he said. They'll have to answer to everyone. He handed me a clean folder labeled Hearing, Evidence Stack. Inside, 20 numbered exhibits, each tabbed and notarized. Remember, he said, stay calm. You're not there to win an argument. You're there to let them hang themselves with their own paperwork. Outside his office, thunder rolled over the mountains. It felt like weather was agreeing with me, and for the first time in months, I slept through the night. The morning of the hearing smelled like rain and copier toner. I wore my best gray suit, the one I'd saved for my wife's memorial, still perfectly pressed. It felt right somehow to carry her steadiness with me into this fight. The county auditorium was half full when I arrived, neighbors in folding chairs, reporters near the aisle, and the HOA board seated together like a crumbling wall. Leonard avoided my eyes, pretending to shuffle through notes. Javier set down his leather briefcase beside me, steam curling from his thermos. Remember, he murmured, no anger. Let the documents speak. The county hearing officer, a retired judge named Beatrice Lang, called the session to order at 9:02 a.m. sharp. Her voice was cool and practiced. This is a public compliance review regarding Maple Ridge Homeowners Association and related property activities. She glanced at me. Mr. Morrison, you're the complainant? Yes, ma'am? She nodded. Proceed. I walked to the podium, the binder heavy in my hands. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the ceiling vents. 3 months ago, I began, this HOA drilled on land they did not own, released hydrogen sulfide gas, and billed homeowners for unauthorized remediation. The parcel in question is legally held under trust by an entity reinstated under state statute. I'm that trustee. I slid Exhibit 1, recorded deed copy, across the table to the clerk. Exhibit 2, I said, is the HOA's own invoice, dated prior to any vote authorizing expenditure. Beatrice flipped through each page with meticulous care. Continue. Exhibit 3, I said, environmental citation issued by Ms. Denise Carr of County Environmental Enforcement. Denise raised a hand from the back row. Verified. Leonard finally stood. This man is twisting technicalities, he said. We acted for the safety of the community. Everyone knew that area was ours in practice. Beatrice didn't look up. You have recorded proof of ownership? Leonard's silence answered for him. Knowledge nugget number 4. In property law, in practice means nothing without chain of title. Authority exists only where it's recorded, not where it's assumed. I could feel the air shifting, people whispering, papers rustling. Then came the visual beat I'd replay in my mind for years. Beatrice stamping the deed page with a red, received mark, the sound echoing like a gavel strike. Javier stood next. For the record, Madam Hearing Officer, my client has remained within all statutes and recorded rights. The association's actions constitute trespass and misappropriation of assessments. Leonard tried one last defense. This is an ambush. He's trying to dissolve our HOA. I took the mic again, steady. No, I'm trying to save it. From you. That line hit like a brick through glass. The hearing concluded 2 hours later. Beatrice announced findings. Preliminary evidence supports claimant's ownership. Further remediation work shall cease pending review. The association may be subject to civil penalties and personal liability claims. Reporters scribbled fast. Neighbors whispered, "Did you hear that?" Outside, it started to rain, soft at first, then heavy. The sulfur scent lifted for the first time in months. Eric slapped my shoulder. "You just won round one." "Not one," I said. Paused. "They'll regroup." He grinned. "Then so will we." That night, Leonard sent a group email blaming media distortion. But you could hear the desperation between every line. Melissa resigned officially, citing ethical differences. Denise's department posted a public notice confirming the drilling violation. Dominoes were going to tilt. Tell me this. If you were on that board, would you double down or step aside? What does accountability look like when you're the one who signed the papers? Comment below. I'm curious how you'd handle it. Within days, the HOA's insurer, Midsure Property Casualty, suspended coverage pending investigation. That meant no defense costs, no indemnity, nothing. Leonard's emails turned frantic, mixing caps and typos. "We need to protect ourselves. Do not speak to press." Too late. The Tribune ran a follow-up. County suspends HOA activities pending ownership review. The photo showed me outside the hearing hall, binder in hand, rain streaking across my glasses. Visual beat number 2 burned into public memory. Truth caught mid-drip, literal and figurative cleansing. In the weeks that followed, fines reversed, accounts froze, and homeowners started demanding refunds. I helped them draft petitions, purely procedural. Javier advised caution. "Don't gloat," he said. "Document." Clara dropped by one evening with a pie. "You realize you've become the reluctant hero of Maple Ridge?" "I didn't want to be a hero," I said. "I just wanted clean air." She smiled. That's usually how heroes start. The HOA tried a final stunt, claiming they'd reinterpret their charter to reassert control over the lot. Javier shook his head when he read the notice. "That's like rewriting gravity," he said. "They're done." But he also warned me. Endings matter. Don't let victory turn into vendetta. He was right. What came next had to be about rebuilding, not revenge. So as September arrived, I drafted something new, what I called the Maple Ridge Community Reform Charter. It outlined transparent voting rules, term limits, and an independent ethics review committee. The last clause mandated open financial disclosures quarterly. Eric added a proposal for community safety inspections led by residents, not contractors. Clara pushed for a scholarship fund in my wife's name. We were crafting the second reversal, though none of us called it that yet. And when I read the final draft under the porch light, rain tapping the railing, I could almost hear my wife's voice in the quiet. "Make it better, Rick. Not just right. Better." By early October, the HOA was a ghost ship. Half the board gone, the treasury frozen, the lawns uncut. The same people who once flinched when I walked by now waved, some out of gratitude, others out of sheer curiosity. The smell of sulfur had vanished completely, replaced by damp leaves and that early fall chill that smells like clean paper and asphalt after rain. Javier met me at the diner, the same corner booth where we'd hatched the first plan months earlier. He had that grin again, the one that came right before a checkmate. "They've reached out," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "Leonard's counsel wants to negotiate." I didn't speak for a few seconds. I just watched the steam rise between us. "Negotiate what?" "Their survival," he said. "You hold the deed. They need a settlement to avoid dissolution." I nodded slowly. "Then we do it public. Every reform in writing." He smiled. "That's the Rick I know. Fair, not merciful." The special meeting took place a week later in the same hall where I'd once been shouted down. This time the chairs faced me. The audience was triple the size. Local reporters, county reps, half the neighborhood. Denise sat near the front, arms folded, still in that denim jacket. Leonard entered last, pale and thinner. No sunglasses this time. When he spoke, his voice was brittle. "We acknowledge administrative errors," he said. "The board acted in good faith." I took the mic calmly. Good faith doesn't excuse bad governance. He winced. Javier opened the reform document and began reading clause by clause, each one projected behind him. Term limits, 2 consecutive years per board member, quarterly financial disclosures, public to all homeowners, IND. Appendant Ethics Committee elected by residents, fee rollback to pre-incident levels, mandatory open records within 5 business days upon written request. And the final clause, he said, pausing, the Maple Ridge Transparency Charter, recorded under county code, signed by both parties, enforceable by court order. Leonard's lawyer leaned over and whispered something to him. Leonard sighed and nodded. Fine. We'll sign. The room erupted, not in applause, but in that collective exhale people give when something heavy finally lifts. Denise stood, clearing her throat. For the record, she said, the county acknowledges full compliance under environmental corrective order. No residual hazard remains. That was the neutral confirmation I hadn't realized I needed, a clean page stamped across our months of chaos. After the signatures dried, Leonard approached me. His hand trembled slightly as he extended it. I was wrong, he said. But you made this hard to ignore. I shook his hand. Good. Maybe next time you'll read the fine print before drilling into someone's yard. He managed a weak chuckle, then left through the side door. I never saw him again. Outside, the sky was clear for the first time in weeks. Clara, Eric, and Melissa gathered around, laughing softly. You actually did it, Eric said. We did it, I corrected him, and now we rebuild. Tell me, for those of you watching, when power breaks like that, do you rebuild the system or start from scratch? Would you trust an HOA again if it meant true transparency, or is the whole model broken? I'd love to see your thoughts down below. 2 days later, the Tribune headline read, Homeowner turns HOA showdown into reform deal, county confirms violations. A photo showed the new board signing the charter. My binder sat visible on the table, open to the stamped deed. Neighbors started stopping by, not to argue, but to help. One brought lumber to rebuild the fence. Another planted flowers where the drill hole once fumed. Clara organized a cleanup day. We found small things worth saving. A bench, a kid's lost shoe, a rusted private property sign we tossed into the recycling bin like an old scar. But the strangest moment came a week later when I checked my mail. A small envelope, no return address, just my name. Inside was a check, $1,675, the total of every fine they'd ever charged me, refunded by the HOA. No note, just a single printed line. For restoration. I taped it inside the binder under the heading, Closed Accounts. Visual beat number 3. I took the last violation notice and dropped it into the same metal fire pit where I used to burn yard waste. It curled slowly, the ink blistering, smoke trailing upward in the cool air. The dog barked once, as if agreeing that it was time. Javier called that evening. You know you could have sued for damages, he said. I didn't want damages, I told him. I wanted balance. He laughed softly. You might be the first client I've had who meant that. The following month slipped into that strange calm that comes after a storm. Quiet streets, mailboxes full of real mail instead of threats, lawns green again. The county posted the final compliance notice on the community board. All remediation complete. Parcel ownership confirmed. I took a photo of it, not out of pride but closure. Then something unexpected happened. The new board, half made up of people who'd once doubted me, asked if I'd serve as community liaison. You understand how the system works, Melissa said, half smiling, and you actually read the statutes. I told her I'd think about it. Truth was, I didn't want power. I just wanted continuity, the kind that doesn't depend on anger to exist. We used the refund funds and small donations to start the Morrison Hydrangea Fund, a scholarship for local kids interested in environmental or civic engineering. Clara insisted on the name. You kept those flowers alive when nothing else could survive, she said. That means something. The first Saturday of November, we held a small ceremony on the restored field. No banners this time, no fake slogans, just neighbors, a few folding chairs, and kids planting a new oak tree near the old drill scar. Denise came by with her clipboard and an actual smile. "Looks better than it smells," she said. Javier handed me the final paperwork: deed transfer confirmation, reform charter filing, and closure letter from the insurer. He flipped through them one last time. "Everything's recorded, notarized, and enforceable. You built a model case study without ever stepping into a courtroom." "I just followed the paper trail," I said. He raised his thermos. "To the quiet kind of justice." The local paper ran one more piece the next week. Maple Ridge HOA adopts transparency reforms after landmark homeowner action. The article ended with a quote from Beatrice, the hearing officer. "Civic order survives not by force, but by record keeping." That line stuck with me. You know, if you believe I fought the right way and that this is how it should end, say a few words for a friend who's been through something similar. These stories only help when they're heard. Subscribe so future ones reach you first, and share it so someone else learns there's a lawful way to fight back. That's on us. Later that winter, I replaced the porch light, the one that had started it all, with an energy-efficient bulb. The dog sat beside me as I flipped the switch. Warm light spilled over the walkway, same as before, but it felt different now. Earned, not defiant. I thought of my wife, how she used to say, "If you want to fix something, learn its language first." I finally understood what she meant. Laws and bylaws, they're just languages. And once you learn them, no one can silence you with fear again. The hydrangeas bloomed that spring, richer than they had in years. Neighbors stopped to take pictures, kids played nearby without coughing, and the air smelled of cut grass instead of chemicals. What changed after? Leonard quietly moved 2 towns over. The HOA's insurer reinstated coverage with new oversight requirements. The county introduced a training workshop for small associations on open governance, and the state environmental office used our case as a compliance example in their quarterly bulletin. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the ridge, I walked the street and saw porch lights glowing one after another, each house reflecting that same small resilience. I smiled, because that's how you know a community's healed. Not when it forgets the fight, but when it no longer needs to. I turned off my camera, closed the binder for good, and said to the quiet street, "Next case will find me soon enough." Then I went inside, poured a coffee, and let the silence finally mean peace.